You're listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast, a resource for the worship arts team at Grace Church.
Well, hello, everybody.
Welcome.
Good to see you.
GC Collaborative.
We should rewind.
You said, no, we're not rewinding.
Yeah.
We need people to see who you said. It's good to see you, didn't
It's
you?
good to see you. Let me finish my sentence. Luke. Good to see you, Luke.
Yes,
on
yes.
this audio podcast for our ears.
Yes, we're glad you're listening.
Well,
that was great.
it's gonna be one of those shows.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait.
Yeah, hey, welcome to the GC Collaborative Podcast. Thanks for listening. My name is Ben, and to my right, as I mentioned, is the beautiful, the glorious, stunning,
One more? Can we get one more? One more?
handsome
Yes. I like
Luke
it.
Lauber.
Love it.
Lauber.
You're too kind. You're too kind.
So we have a great show today. Today is a show we interviewed Sharla Pair, who has been a part of the Grace Worship Ministry. Gosh, for about six years.
Yeah, 6 years. She actually, me and her came around the same time, I think.
Yeah,
I remember correctly.
Yeah, so very excited to hear her story. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. She's a rock and a pillar in our ministry, and someone that I enjoy her leadership on our team, and just always have appreciated her heart and her passion to serve the church. So sit back, relax.
It's going to be good.
Unless you're driving, please don't relax.
Yeah, don't relax.
Much.
No, don't sit back. Sit back up. Sit back up.
Enjoy. Welcome, Sharla. It's so good to see you. Thanks for coming. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good. Hey, so we are excited you're here to be a part of the show. We love being able to share with our listeners, the people who are an integral part of what we do as a worship ministry at Grace in all of our campuses. And you happen to be one of those individuals who volunteers at, I think, every one of our campuses more frequently than some of the others. I think probably more Olathe than over at North. Have you led at North?
I've never been there longer than like 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you just lead and you leave. Okay.
No. I've never led.
Power move.
I've gone
power
to support
like,
a friend.
She's such a diva. Like, she just plays the piano, sings, and as I'm leaving.
Goodbye, North Campus.
Goodbye, North Campus. I think I will head to Olathe now. Yeah, we joke because that's the complete opposite of who you are as an individual. And we'll need to get Andrew to invite you over there sometime, because I think they're missing out. But thank you for coming today. What we wanted to do is just sit down and chat with you a little bit about your walk, your journey in becoming a worship leader. So can you take a second and just kind of set the table for everybody to understand your path of getting to being a worship leader on stage at Grace specifically, but generally speaking, talk about your journey of where you came from, how you got here.
Well, it was a cold winter night in January of 1982.
Oh my gosh. Whoa. Settle in, everybody. Settle in.
Actually, before we start this, can we just admire the fact this is our first interview as a podcast where somebody has come in with notes or like prepared. And that just shows Sharla's heart of just being prepared. And I love it because everybody else is just like, yeah, I'll just wing it. But she came in. She's ready. I love it. This is great.
I just don't want to be come across as incompetent. It's one of my fears.
Well, we're always here for you in that. So.
What's your Enneagram again?
5.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yep.
I love
for
it.
all you Enneagram nerds.
So if you hear a tussle of paper, that's why.
Yeah, I'm trying not to tussle. All right, so anyway, yes. All my life I've been around music and ministry. My parents used to be a part of a gospel group, Southern gospel, not gospel. And so like they had their own album. I was even a baby sitting on my grandma's lap, on the cover. Excuse me. And then my parents were called into full-time ministry. And so my dad became a youth pastor. My mom was a worship leader. And, my dad would sing on the worship team too. And she would play guitar, or my mom would play guitar. And so I grew up, that was just the normal. Ministry was my life, my family's life. And so I would sing on stage, whenever the opportunity came across, and I would sing in children's church. There's a song called "I Want to Be a Man That You Would Write About," talking about like if the Bible was written today, I want to be someone who would be written about that I served God and I honored Him. So I changed the words to that song, and I was, I don't know, 3rd grade, and I said, I want to be a woman you would write about. Anyway, so little things like that.
Yeah.
So always doing things.
How old were you when you first set foot on a stage at a local church?
I was a baby.
You were a baby?
like toddler.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
As soon as I could make noise,
Gotcha.
have a mic. Yeah. I was always
just always there. It was just always a part of you.
I never left.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and then my parents were youth pastors. Had a great youth ministry. I would say maybe the best in the country. And their philosophy was always, if a youth could do it, they need to do it. So my mom, initially started leading worship at the youth group, but then they had youth take over, and my mom would joke that I stole her job, but they wanted that. So we would go to missions trips and outreaches, and we traveled to other youth groups and had great opportunities, led worship at conferences and things like that. And so I actually started leading worship between my freshman and sophomore year. And so I was involved in all of that church side, but also was really heavily into sports. I had a dream to be able, I wanted to be able to do both ministry and play sports at college, and eventually go on to, how far I would have gone with that. And then I had a knee injury my sophomore year of high school, a couple of them back to back. And so after my surgery, the doctor came and told my parents that I had the knee of an 80-year-old with arthritis, and that I was not allowed to play sports competitively again unless I want a knee replacement as a young person.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I will never forget sitting on the couch after coming home from the surgery and my dad explaining all of this to me, and I was just weeping because my dreams, my hopes for my future, that came to a crashing halt. And I remember telling my dad, after I'd composed myself, okay, if I can't trust Jesus in these hard times, what business do I have trusting Him in the good times? And so I purposed that day that it kind of left the sports dreams to the side and decided to pursue ministry more. And at that time, my two best friends, we would enjoy singing together, but we ended up forming a group called Champions in the Making, and we led worship together, and we would go and sing at places, and we decided we wanted to start a school assembly team because we wanted to reach people with hope and good news to the people that would maybe never step a foot inside a church. And so even though we couldn't say, why we had the hope unless we were asked, because we would always do question and answer time after the school assembly. And so they would ask, and we would be able to say, it's Jesus Christ is our hope. But we ended up traveling, going to school assemblies, and we... after a while, the team grew and that kind of thing. It was just...
How old were you around this time? Was this high school?
Our first school assembly was our junior year of high school.
Okay, gotcha.
And then we continued it through our second year of college. So it was 2.5 or 3.5 years.
I think you've shared some videos. I remember seeing on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really...
It was a very early 2000s, late 90s kind of vibe going on there.
Yes, for sure.
We all have those.
Not ashamed at all.
I do not.
You hid them away.
Yes. Burned them all.
So continued touring, locally, leading worship, singing, every opportunity, and felt an actual calling from the Lord in a youth camp setting, in high school. And my dream was to then marry a youth pastor, and I would be the worship pastor, and anyway, so I had it all planned. So with all these amazing opportunities, I always wanted to point to Jesus. I always wanted Him to get the receive the glory and that sort of focus, but I had never really failed. I'd never really been met with a no, and I had a lot of favor. And then I went to CBC I was...
What's CBC?
Oh, sorry, Central Bible College.
Okay.
It is now no longer it was a more of a ministry-focused school, and then Evangel University was more of the liberal arts school. So they're both Assemblies of God, like ran or whatever. Well, Evangel ended up absorbing the CBC students, and so it's just Evangel.
Gotcha.
University now, and they're in Springfield. So I went to CBC and Central Bible College, and I, of course, I'd come from all these opportunities, and, Sharla, it was, wow. And I auditioned for the worship team, and I was told no. So I was like, oh, okay, this stinks. So then later on in the semester, there was an opening that had come up, and I tried out again. And again, I did not make it onto the worship team. So,
so you had this feeling of like I'm gonna get this, or
oh yeah,
why am I even auditioning?
Yeah, exactly. I was to that point.
Just because, got it.
Because I'd always had all these opportunities, and like I said, I'd never really experienced that kind of failure. I'd failed, I'd done stuff, and
sure.
So then over the winter break, Christmas break, one of the a friend was killed in a car wreck, and she was on the worship team, and so that sounds really callous, but there was an opening again. So again, I tried out. And again, I did not make it. One of the reasons was I was always the lead, like in our group, the three of us, our trio. I was always the lead.
You're the melody singer.
Yeah, I was normally the melody singer, and so I never really learned harmony very well. And so you had to be able to sing harmony to make it onto these teams, and I wasn't very strong at it at all. And so that was a real wake-up call to like God doesn't need me. Like, there's always going to be someone who's better, who can do this better than you, that can take your place. And I'm really thankful that I went through that time, because it was a real eye-opening time in my life that it was very humbling. And so now I don't take things, for granted.
Right.
Knowing that
probably made you a better leader too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I find those times are huge moments. I think they're kind of these like, they are, I don't know, what do you call those? Like a flag post moment in our life, in our journey, because it's like a moment of decision. Like, how are you going to handle this? Is this, it's that idea of what does God really want from you? Does he want you to be a performer, or does he want you to be a worship leader? What do you want? Do you want to be a performer or a worship leader? And those are those moments where you get those opportunities to choose.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So I at that time I was really questioning, like, okay, did I mishear you? Do you even want to use me?
Yeah.
And so we ended up. My husband and I were married at this point. Had Victoria, my now 14-year-old, and we moved back home to Grandview, Missouri, because actually it was Raymore, but my brother was in his senior year of high school, and so we wanted to be home for that because he's real involved in sports, and so we wanted to be here for his senior year. And at that point, the pastor had resigned from our home church, and we thought, okay, in the staff, there's some changeover in staff, and we thought, okay, this is the opportunity. My husband graduated from CBC with his youth ministry degree, and I had, basically it was a worship degree, basically. And so we thought, here we go. My husband's going to be youth pastor. I'm going to be worship pastor, and it's going to be perfect. And it didn't work out that way at all. So I find myself in a secular job, not in ministry. And again, I'm back to questioning, all right, God, well, again, did I hear you wrong, or what do you have for me? And at that time, I had, it was the secular job was just really demeaning. Not a good situation, and I lost a baby to miscarriage, and it was a really pivotal time in my life. It was 2008, spring, and it was again one of those moments I had to choose. Was I going to trust God, that He still had a plan for me, or was I going to live in the misery? And so we fast forward a few years. I had begun teaching at the Christian school that was associated with our church, and I was teaching music and theater and journalism. And the worship pastor that was there at our church ended up going back to Canada to be with family, and so they asked me to be the interim until they could find a replacement. And that ended up being several months. And then my dad actually became the senior pastor of the church. And so he just made it official, I guess. And he was, so I became full-time worship pastor there. And he was one of the best bosses to work for, not just because he's my dad, but he's just a great man, such a great supporter. My parents have both been amazing, encouraging in, my weirdness and individuality, and supporting me, and all of that.
Yeah, they're good people.
Huh?
I said they are good people.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Very good. I'm very blessed. And so I was living my best life. I loved going to work, even in difficult times. If you love what you're doing, every day I loved getting up and going to work. So my dad ended up, after 5 years, resigning from his position as pastor there. And when they hired the new pastor to come on, I was brought into his office, and they told me that as long as I was on stage, the church could not move on, and so they were relieving me of my position.
Was that was because of your familial relationship to the former lead pastor? Yeah.
Because every time they would see me on stage, they would see my dad. So I was told to pack my office immediately and to leave.
Immediately, huh?
Immediately. And they, it was not a great situation. I was kind of treated like I did something wrong.
Right.
Went through my computer and all my, it was not great. And so, and during that time, there were, it felt like a big group of people, but I'm sure it was just, they were the loud ones. But we had a group of people that just were not very nice to my family, very hateful. I wouldn't say not nice. They were hateful. And it did two things for me. One, it broke my heart for the church. I was really able to see the church as sheep and herding sheep. And it opened my eyes to how we need to be, compassionate towards them, even when they're hateful and just downright mean. They've got things in their lives that they're acting out on because of those things. So it helped me to see the church in a different light, but it also helped me to know that everybody has a story. And even what maybe we hear what the story is, because there were some things that were going on in my family, why my dad resigned, and lies, some truth, some lies, and people automatically believe the bad and the worst.
It's more compelling.
Yeah, it is. It's entertaining. Yeah. That's why we like crazy stuff, news stories and all that. Yep. So it allowed me to see that not everything that we hear or see is the truth. And so it was a very difficult time, but it was, I feel like, a very good learning time, I grew a lot during that time.
And I remember, because this was like, you came to Grace Church in what, 2014? 14. And I remember when you came and you auditioned, and I just remember there was a sense of like you were going through a healing process.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So was this was, how soon after these events was it that you started attending here? 2 months?
Yeah, it was May of 2014 that I was let go. And so we were in church every week. And so to not go to church, I was like, what do I do? So we started, checking out a couple different churches, and we thought we'd found one. And the friends that had invited us to that church were going to go be out of town. And so another friend invited me to Grace. And I was like, I guess we'll just try it. Yeah. And we never left. It was kind of crazy too, because the first week, There was a volunteer worship leader. You weren't here because it was July, typically when you take your sabbatical.
Yeah.
And so it was
PTO.
PTO, whatever.
We don't sabbatic. We don't sabbatic around here.
Okay, you can
No
edit
such
that
thing as the sabbat.
So it was Josh or Chris or somebody like that. And then the next week, the students were leading worship. And that, of course, I was like, oh, yes, this is awesome.
Right.
I loved it. And then it maybe the third week you were there. I don't remember exactly, but
that's how it works. You get them by not being on stage, and then by the time I'm back, it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm gonna
no,
stick
it just
around.
kept getting better. Every
seems
week.
like-
It was
right.
He seems like he has a good personality.
Well, I did. I remember it was a few weeks after being here. You were standing up front, and I approached you and I just said, I just appreciate the way that you. I don't know what I said exactly. Something about run worship. I don't know. That's not correct at all. But
I'm sure it was very encouraging if I know you, which I know you very well. So
I just appreciate it. And then we talked with Tim and kind of told our story, and he was engaged and prayed for us right away. Just everything I felt from Grace, and what I continue to tell people is that this church embodies its name. It is Grace. And I know there are not, I even serving on staff for the year. You see behind the curtain or whatever. But I loved my time, on staff and still now with volunteering. I love Grace. There's nowhere else I want to be.
Yeah, it's good people.
Yes. So.
Wow, what a journey! What a journey!
Most of the time, just talking about that.
It's all right. That's good.
I think the thing I love about about hearing people's stories is just that I think we all have a journey. We all have these moments of opportunities to make us better followers of Christ. And I always love hearing how people have, being put in a position of either reacting or responding, trusting or not trusting. And so hopefully that just hearing your story was an encouragement to people out there. Like, I think I can trust, there's those moments that you have those opportunities. You can grow in Christ through those and become better, more effective worship leaders, not just musicians, not skilled musicians, but worship leaders. So I love it. Thanks for sharing that. So I remember one moment, I remember when you auditioned, it was awesome. And I remember going, okay, she's got a gift, she's got a skill. But the thing I remembered most was the fact that you were a leader. And it was very, as a fellow leader in a worship ministry at a local church, when you come across another leader, it's like, oh, okay, there's potential there for having someone else who can, you can trust in and lean on. And so, I know you started engaging in worship leadership, but kind of went through a time of you learning the culture and who we are as a church and that kind of thing. One of the aspects that I remember standing backstage with you, I don't know do you remember this story?
I remember this story.
Yeah.
I remember it.
So
I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah. So one of the things at our church, which I've always loved at Grace Church, but I'd always run across people who came from a different background than Grace Church's traditional heritage background, which was, the Independent Baptist Fundamentalist Church. That's where we were rooted in way back in the day, something we broke free of many, many, many moons ago. But there's still those moments in our culture that I think we need to be pushed and pressed. And so I would get people that would join our team in the past who came from a background that was from either a Pentecostal type church background, those kinds of things, and they would be very they would either get frustrated and leave because they would filter the spirituality of Grace Church through the height of their raised hands in our worship setting, which is not biblical to judge people's worship that way.
Absolutely not.
Right? But at the same time, for me, I'm like, I want people to be pressed and I want people to be pushed to the boundaries of being able to understand that physical expression of worship during a corporate setting is okay, that it's something that is biblical, right? That there are moments that you can raise your hands and it's okay. I mean, I've been in leadership spot where I've made everybody in the room raise their hand and I've said, okay, look around the room, everybody's raised their hand. So now you all have the freedom to do it, right? So I remember one time you were leading and I could tell that you were trying to figure out the culture, you were holding back a little bit. Do you remember this? And I told you backstage between the service, I was like, Sharla, here's the deal. I know that in you want to lead us in worship. I said, just let it lead us. Let us learn from you, right? And that is something that that I wanted you to bring to the table to our worship ministry, which you've done phenomenally in that regard. So, do you remember that moment?
Oh yeah, I do.
So, tell me your thinking process of coming to a church that was outside of the norm for you historically, and how you engaged in leadership.
Yeah. So kind of like you were saying, just because someone's hands are raised doesn't mean their heart is raised. And I definitely came from a charismatic Pentecostal background. And I think you can be burned out by that because you can see maybe someone raising their hands in worship, but then backbiting and being nasty to people. And so those don't always correlate. Kind of like, David in the Bible when he was crowned, king.
Yeah.
And, oh my goodness, I can't remember the prophet's name. Samuel.
Yeah.
God was saying, these his brothers were out on the outside. Their appearance was amazing, but David, his heart. So anyway, so I knew that coming in that it wasn't going to be like what I'd been brought up in, but I love the heart that I saw in leadership and especially in you. And I knew that I wanted a genuine experience and an encounter in worship more than I wanted the show or the outward expression. And so growing up, I'd always been told by my parents, be aware of your audience and respect that, and also to respect leadership and their authority over you. And so I wanted to honor Grace and you and Tim in that I didn't want to force anything or be showy at all, but I wanted to just bring the heart and want to lead just in a way that would be honoring to Grace.
Yeah.
But I remember when you said to just be me, you said, the church needs you to be you. And I was like, it just, the respect for you guys just went through the roof at that point. And I may not be maybe as expressive as I was back then or whatever, but it's not, the environment is not always right for that.
Yeah.
And so again, I want to be honoring to the church and to God at the same time. I think the Lord appreciates that more than craziness.
Yep. That's what they call that, Luke?
No.
Maturity.
Oh,
maturity. Yeah. Well, I've always appreciated that about you, and it's a small story, but it's one I think that that reveals. It reveals the heart of both, our desire and then you as a leader. And I always appreciated that about you, your respect for culture and understanding that it's important to identify who you're leading and how they are receiving and how they are expressing. So that's a good thing.
And I also think that's just a cool thing that a church can be, I think, is, as an outsider, like myself, into this situation is, been setting up a culture of, we do want these different, because some of our worship leaders are very still, very calm, and they do great at that. But then also saying, we want all aspects of it, which I think is really awesome as Grace as a culture, is just to say, we want you to bring your background. We want you to let that influence Grace. And I think in a lot of ways, that's a more holistic view of God and the gospel, is we all do express ourselves differently in the church. And it's always crazy to me when I do talk to worship leaders. And it's funny because it seems like your more shy people will feel like they need to be more outgoing on stage, and then your more outgoing people will feel like they need to bring it back.
It's totally opposite.
And I think it's just a tactic of the enemy. Because I remember I worked with a guy back in the day, and he was like, he walked into a room and everybody would just like look at it. He was just that guy that just had that personality. And then he would start leading worship, and you'd think like a mouse was up there. And it was the craziest thing. and I talked to him about it, and it came because to the point of where he just said, I feel guilty, like I don't want the attention on me, which was out of a good heart, obviously. But at the same time, I was like, man, like people are just missing that personality that God's given you, to just be that guy that, you know, people attract to naturally, and vice versa. You know, I talked to a guy who would try to be all crazy up there, and it just felt weird, you know, like that's not you.
Trying too hard.
Yeah, and it was this exact same conversation on the opposite side of the coin of, well, I just feel like I need to be more engaging and blah, blah, blah. And so it's crazy. And so that's what I love about Grace a lot is, you know, and Ben, even in my life, of just be you, you know. And I know seeing you lead worship, Sharla, I pointed at you like everybody can see me point. But even that, I think that also just has such a culture of inspiration. If you can get people to not compare, but just be inspired by each other. And I think that's the cool thing is, I mean, every worship leader at every campus that I get to see at different times, it's always just like, man, they're so gifted at this, or they're so good at this, and to just learn and bounce off of each other, I think is just one of the things I really love about Grace, and that you've brought a huge piece of too, as well, and just as Ben has said, the heart behind it as well, and it's been really cool to see. So
yeah, one thing I love too, and that I've appreciated about you is your story obviously has influenced your passion for students and young people, and I know for me personally, my family, you've impacted my family by just your time that you spend with my daughter Karis, because, you know, her desires and being in worship and that kind of thing, you've kind of helped mold some of that stuff within her, which has been awesome to see. So can you talk about the importance for worship ministries to invest in young people, and then maybe kind of share a little bit about your heart for that, why that's such an important aspect of who you are.
I believe that we typically, you know, any age can minister to any age, but a lot of times you'll see, especially young people, they receive more if a young person is. That's why we did the school assemblies, is because we got up there and we said, you know, we're remaining abstinent. We don't go out and drink a party, and you know, we're making these choices, and we're teenagers just like you. And so I believe training up that next generation, they can reach their own peers, friend groups, maybe more than we can. And also, we're not going to be around forever. And so we need to constantly replace ourselves. That's kind of a job as a parent, is we want to raise our children up enough so that they don't need us anymore, so that they can, you know, we want to, you know, like
pass the baton.
Pass the baton, exactly. Yes. Because we're going to be old someday, and, you know.
If you don't, the church dies.
Exactly. Yep. So I believe it's important to continue to train people, and then those people train people, because there's room enough at the table for everyone. We all need to be used, and can be used, because Family of God is not, you know, we're not going to run out of room. And so training up the next people, you know, generation to come, and some things that I've seen in them blow me away. I mean, Karis, how we recently led worship together, and every time she led the song that she was singing, not just that the words, the song is powerful, but her leadership in singing that song out and singing it over the people and singing it to the Lord, it was powerful. There's an anointing, there's an authority in her life for that. And so I want, you know, to help encourage that you know, she will understand that she is, you know, she has that authority, that calling on her life. However, you know, the Lord chooses to use it in the future. So I think that's important.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Something I've always appreciated is people like yourself that, you know, identify kids that, you know, they can help take under their wing and invest in them. Because, you know, as much as I can tell one of my children something, it always is
Dad.
Right. No, I get it.
Thanks, you know. Dad.
Yes, my amazing daughter is the same way. You know, same way.
So speaking of like with students, there's like with young people. So one of the things too that I think has shifted in the environment of church, and I think in the past 20 years probably, has been the shift of culture with like women in leadership, and you know, it's specifically we're talking specifically to worship and how that has started to change, or how it's changed. obviously for me and Luke, I mean, we're guys, so we're sitting on at a different spectrum
Right.
Regarding this issue. While we may say, what do you mean? Everything's fine. It's what are you talking about? Like, we've not been through an experience of being a female in a leadership position or striving to be in a leadership position in a local church or having to deal with those things. And I'm guessing that your journey has had its moments of stress regarding that particular issue. I'm guessing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and so I see you investing in like my daughters and other young people in girls and females in regard to leadership. So I think it'd be cool for us to hear kind of that aspect of your journey. I mean, if you can maybe unpack just a little bit about some of that tension and how how it's molded you to be where you're at and, what you hope to see. Maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
Even if you have a story or something you can share, that'd be
Okay.
great.
Again, I think I have an advantage or whatever over some people because bringing my parents into this, they were always so encouraging, and I didn't even know that really female ministry tension was a thing until I got older, like older high school, just because it wasn't an issue. Like my mom was the worship leader at our church several years ago, and I looked at one of the most influential people outside of my family was Darlene Check, and she was the worship leader at Hillsong.
Shout to the Lord,
amazing.
all the earth, let us sing. Oh my God.
That was
That
awful.
musical break was brought to you by Ben and Luke.
What harmony was that? Oh,
I don't
amazing.
know. It was robot harmony.
I love it.
Car horn harmony.
That's changing the game right there.
That was the sound
Anyways.
of my Nissan horn.
Your Nissan sing shout to the Lord when you honk at people?
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing. Instead of a
yeah.
honk, it's just shout to the Lord.
Things would be a lot less road rage if we could all do that.
Bring in the
Please
kingdom.
continue.
Bring in
Sorry.
the kingdom in. I love it.
Sorry. So Darlene,
I can't get that image out of my head. I'm
I'll
sorry.
never be able to do that song
Just,
here
yeah,
again.
you're just so angry. Just
Shout to the Lord. Yeah.
anyways, continue.
Darlene.
Darlene. I think women like her were trailblazers, Sandy Patty, and different women in ministry, and I even had the blazers that she would wear.
Oh, wow.
And I would
Everything down to the
watch.
style.
Oh yeah. I was a little Darlene, and I would watch, as much as you can. They didn't have, videos as available as they do now, but anytime I could see her leading, I just watch her and try to emulate everything she did.
awesome.
And I remember one time she came for a conference when I was in high school to Kansas City, and I was like, I gotta be there. So I went and I cried the whole time. I'm not sure if it was the Holy Spirit or if I was just fangirling, but I was
A little bit of
overwhelmed.
both. A little bit of both.
Yeah,
Probably a
I
little
love
both.
those.
But she had a table set up, and she had 2 messages on cassette tape,
Right.
that I bought, and I listened to them for tons of times. I bought her book, so I didn't really surround myself, but I surrounded myself mentally with those kind of strong women role models. And my mom also, she did a teaching several times and even shared it in big service one Sunday about the 5 women that were mentioned in the genealogy of Christ, and how they played a pivotal role in the Savior's genealogy. Like, it's just amazing. And how often that women, God used women in the Bible. They were the first ones to proclaim that Jesus had risen.
Yep.
And so there's so many examples. And so anytime that I would feel that like inadequacy, and I still do it, times feel inadequate. I'm just a woman, and I don't have whatever the authority. I'm reminded of those stories that God uses everyone. He used a donkey, so he can use me, and remind myself that he has given me that authority, that he has put me in these positions not for me, but to honor him and to bring him glory. So there have been times that I feel that. There's an example.
Yes, you're trying to think, how do I say this
yeah.
without naming names
Sorry.
and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
They were interviewing.
Just use the name Ben. That's what I do.
Yeah,
Yes,
just
so
use...
Yeah,
they're
so
interviewing the new
Ben-
pastor
No,
at
don't
my
do
former
that.
church. Ben stood up and
No.
said,
Yeah.
No, there was they were interviewing for the new pastor at our former church, and a man, and they brought it in kind of like a town hall, like they could come and ask him any questions. And I fortunately wasn't there, but a friend who was on staff relayed this to me later, said that a man stood up and said, "What about that worship leader? What are you going to do about her? Basically, are you going to get rid of her?" And at this point, especially being in ministry, you have to start to grow some thicker skin, because not only do you have people against you, but you have the enemy working against you too. And so that was just an example of I laughed, but inside you're like, oh, I'm dying inside.
Yeah.
So that was an example, I guess.
Was that because they didn't like a woman leading them? Or do you know the story behind that?
I could assume, but that
Okay,
would just
gotcha.
be me.
Your story is...
My story is that they didn't like a woman being in
Sure.
that position. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm sure that's... there's probably been a lot of situations like that give you that feeling or have given you that impression.
Yes. Yeah. And what's really, I think, important is unless they directly come out and say, I don't like you as a woman being on stage, you can't assume that it's because of that.
Right.
Yeah, there have definitely been situations, or I didn't get a position, like a job or whatever it was, that I could assume, you know what, I've got the qualifications. It's just because I'm a female.
Right.
And so but you can't dwell on that. You can't, that's living a, what's that called? Like a victim lifestyle. You can't live as a victim. You've got to walk, okay, I know that God has called me this. He's given me this authority. He knows what's best. And so I'm going to just trust that this isn't the right thing for me at the moment.
So how do you answer people who might say in that scenario that you're not standing up for yourself, or that's not just? Do you know what I mean? Like some people might say these people like that making decisions that way need to be challenged, or they need to be like, you need to call that out, and you need to attack that, and you need to. How do you answer that?
This might not be the right answer for every situation, but I try to allow the Lord to fight those battles, and to pray, okay, God, if they're wrong, if this is why they're doing this, because I'm a female, God, I ask that you would convict their heart, that you, because he does a lot better job convicting than I can, because I would just start a fight, or, there would just be an argument. No one would win in that situation, even if I stood up. So maybe there are times that you do stand up, but every time I can think of, it's just a time that I need to back down and say, I'm going to let the Lord handle and fight my battles.
I love it.
That's good. That's hard. I mean, I think we all have situations like that too, where, I mean, that's just so good to hear, because I think of situations in my life where it's like, your natural instinct is, I'm going to take care of this. Like, I'm going to do this. And sometimes it might be that. But I think what you said of just following the Lord is so important, because there are times where that's so good, just in any situation in life, which is, just following the Holy Spirit on those things, which can be hard, because
Yes.
That's what makes worship leaders good worship leaders, is following God's voice and trusting. And you've had lots of opportunities to do that. So anyway, we appreciate you so much and are so grateful for you taking time to share your story and to connect with us and the worship ministry at Grace through the podcast. Thanks for coming, Sharla.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We got one question though. Social media. We always ask social media, any way people can reach out to you, follow you, songs out there, anything, everything that comes to mind right now.
No.
I was going to say, I don't think she's got.
It's okay. I just
Sharla
always
doesn't
like
want to
to throw
share
it
that.
out there. I always like to throw it out there.
I do. I mean, I guess I have a Facebook and an Instagram, but
Yeah.
I don't post a ton.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Me either.
I'm kind of a private person.
Yeah.
I feel you on that one.
Just kind of the best way to find Sharla is to probably go to your Instagram and my Instagram comments and just see if she hearts things or comments, and then you can find her.
That's true.
Pretty much how I operate too. So
Yeah.
I feel you on that one.
Thanks again, Sharla.
Thank
Appreciate
you
you
so
very
much,
much.
Sharla.
Thank you guys.
Wow, that was good.
That's so funny every time we record these, because I'm gonna let the people know on an inside thing right now is that
Are we not going to redo this?
Well, you didn't let me redo mine.
Oh no!
So what happens is we do these interviews,
Oh, no.
and then we come back later
Busted.
and we do the
Intro,
intro and the
outro.
outro later.
Yeah.
So it's always fun to
Because we know how to
come out
set
of
it
the-
up. We know how to come out of it.
Typically, I think I'm the one doing the setups at the end, right?
You are.
Yeah.
But I tried to set it up, and then you just stared at me when I said, wow, like, why are you saying that? So I got really self-conscious in the moment. Like, I did something wrong. Oh,
That's so
my
funny.
gosh. That's amazing. But no, in all seriousness, it was an amazing interview.
It was.
And I love doing the interviews because you just learn so much about somebody. And obviously, we see each other a lot, but to just hear the story that they've gone through and what God's done in their lives and through their lives and the lessons they've had to learn and what got them to this place, it's just always amazing. So, and it's just cool to hear her story as a female worship leader, like we talked about, and just all the battles and things like that had to go through. And it's cool to see the road she's paved, which is really awesome. So,
Yeah. So thank you, Sharla. Appreciate you very much.
Oh, yeah.
It was great to hear from her.
and a few things real fast from just the
Hit it.
GC Collaborative side. We are actually really excited because this month, on the 2nd and the 9th of October, so tomorrow, if you're listening to this on October 1st, tomorrow and then next Friday, we actually have 2 different sets of songs coming out of underscores that we've done for different videos in the past. Yes. So Kurt White and Nathan Fleming have both put some scores together for different videos we've done. And we just said a couple months ago, why don't we release these? Like, why are we keeping these and not doing anything with them? So you look up GC Collaborative on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube. They'll be up there as well. You will find these scores. And so we're super excited about them.
So excited. It's beautiful.
And yeah, it's just great fall music, and great like quiet time, or you just want to like chill kind of
Chris
music.
Anderson made the graphic for the.
Chris Anderson made the graphics, that's for sure. And so it's really just cool to see those come out. So we're super excited about that.
Yeah.
And then also, as always, when you look at your planning center, please be kind and accept or decline, because the question mark is death for all those involved.
That's right. You guys have a good one. Thanks so much for
Thanks,
listening.
everybody.
Thanks for listening to the GC Collaborative Podcast. If you have any questions or would like more information, check us out at visitgracechurch.com.